After an incident, I was demoted from the head office to a rural branch. I'm now unwelcomed by everyone and sidelined by my department with minimal responsibilities. Then one day I ended up solving a problem for a younger boss who had transferred from the headquarters. The younger boss, who had thought of me as incapable, was surprised by my problem-solving skills. Following that, my life took a complete 180 degrees turn. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm 43 years old. While my peers are busy with marriage, parenting, and climbing the career ladder, I'm single and stuck in a small rural branch far removed from any prospects of promotion. My job involves organizing documents that are about to be stored away, likely never to be seen again. It's the kind of work that wouldn't really matter if I did it or not. If I suddenly quit tomorrow, it wouldn't cause any trouble for anyone. A few years ago, due to certain circumstances, I was transferred to this branch. Initially, I considered quitting, but by that time, I was past my prime working years, and job hunting in the countryside where opportunities are scarce seemed too daunting. So I ended up staying. I used to work at the head office. Suddenly, I was transferred from the head office to this small rural branch. Of course, there was a reason for this, and it seems that the story of why I was transferred had already spread widely within the branch. The original employees would whisper behind my back or look at me with suspicion. Despite that, I tried to engage with them at first, but it seemed they just wanted me to leave as soon as possible. Their overt attitude sometimes interfered with the work. After several years of this, I've now focused solely on not causing any trouble. I'm treated almost like I don't exist. At best, I'm harmless. At worst, I'm ignored. But reaching this state also required a lot of effort and humility on my part. So, in a way, it's a satisfactory outcome for me. Then one day, a new manager, a transfer from the head office, joined our branch. She was a smart-looking woman in her late 20s, dressed sharply in a suit. Unlike my emotion, her transfer was part of grooming her for a future leadership role. My name is Sarah. I look forward to working with you. She introduced herself, exuding the air of an elite with a confident demeanor. Initially, she seemed a bit stiff, but as she settled in, she began to show more of her youthful, vibrant smile. However, just because she has moved, it didn't change my job in any way. Even though she was my direct superior, there was little interaction between us, given my sidelined position. Sarah held individual meetings with all employees soon after arriving. When it was my turn, I explained my work situation as it was. Sarah frowned and seemed to want to say something, but she didn't, and the meeting ended without any changes to my situation. In the end, my work and life remained unchanged. I spend my days doing meaningless work and head home once it's time to clock out. At home, all I do is eat and then go to sleep. My daily life hasn't changed at all from before. With so little work to do, I even spend my breaks leisurely. I often finish my lunch quickly and then take walks around the office to pass the time. Lately, I've noticed Sarah frequently using her phone in secluded spots. Being a young woman, she might be in touch with a boyfriend. However, Sarah always looked troubled during these moments. Wouldn't she look happier or more excited if she were talking to her boyfriend? I found that a bit curious. But even though I've seen this scene many times, I figured it was none of my business. I hadn't paid much attention to it before. But yesterday, I saw Sarah again, and she looked even more troubled than usual. I just couldn't get her distressed face out of my mind. Even if she had a serious problem, it's unlikely she would turn to someone like me for help. So I decided to carry on as usual. The next day, I arrived at the office first, as always. If there's one good thing about being transferred here, it's that I've been able to lead a healthier lifestyle with an early to bed, early to rise routine and leaving work on time. My health is in top shape. Living alone, I cook my own meals, not just once, but every day. Bringing my homemade lunch and starting the day by wiping down my desk in an empty office has become my daily ritual. Previously, after I arrived at work, William, who is nearing retirement, would usually come in next. But that order changed after Sarah moved, and today, as usual, Sarah came in a while after I did. I greeted her but noticed her complexion looked worse than usual today. Her face was particularly pale. While watching her, I suddenly realized something. Come to think of it, she used to smile so much at first, but lately I haven't seen her smile at all. Concerned about her extremely pale complexion, I was about to suggest that she go home when I heard an "ee" from her desk. At that moment, William arrived, and both he and I turned our gaze towards Sarah. In the direction of our gaze, there was Sarah, pale as a ghost and trembling violently. She was shaking so uncontrollably that the phone she was holding fell to the floor with a dull thud. Seeing Sarah in such a state, I instinctively rushed over to her and asked, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Then, I saw the screen of her phone. It was receiving notifications in real time, and the chat screen was filled with a one-sided barrage of harsh messages, aggressive stickers and emojis. Seeing the chat screen brought back unpleasant memories for me. But I knew I had to prioritize Sarah right now. I pushed those resurfacing memories aside and asked her gently, "Can I take a look at your phone?" Trembling and tearful with fear, Sarah nodded and handed me her phone. Despite being in shock, upon looking at the messages sent to Sarah, I saw an endless stream of texts filled with harsh insults, derogatory remarks, and mocking content, all expressed in the harshest terms imaginable. Towards the end, the messages took a disturbing turn, clearly implying harm, and it felt incredibly dangerous. Although memories from my past threatened to overwhelm me, I made a conscious effort to stay calm and proceeded to ask Sarah a few questions. "Do you know this person?" She shook her head in response to my question. "Any idea who it could be?" As I continued, she bit her lip and answered, "I received comments from this person on a different social media platform. It started off normally but gradually became more extreme. I got scared and blocked them, and then this happened. They've also spread lies about me to my friends and on forums. I'm so scared I can barely sleep." Sarah, seemingly at her limit, buried her exhausted face in her hands. Seeing Sarah like that, I felt a pain in my heart, as if I was looking at my past self. At the same time, I decided I couldn't let her go through what I did, and resolved to help her. "Let's fight back," I said. Sarah looked puzzled at my words, but I was confident I could help her. I understood her pain, sadness, fear, anger, and despair better than anyone. As more employees started arriving, they cast curious looks at the unusual pairing of Sarah and me. Despite feeling the weight of their stares, leaving was not an option for me. Even though Sarah seemed confused, I pointed to her personal computer and asked, "Do you have the history saved?" It might have been harsh to press her in her dazed state, but time was of the essence, and we couldn't afford to waste any. Given the situation, I knew we had to methodically address what needed to be done. So I began giving Sarah instructions. Despite being sidelined at the office, now I was once a high-flying executive at the head office, just a step away from the boardroom. Having studied how to lead and motivate subordinates as a manager, I knew how to get Sarah to take action, despite her current state of shock. I instructed her to first file a deletion request with the asset administrators. We aimed to get the situation to a point where we could identify the perpetrator in accordance with the terms specified in the service agreement. Then we printed out all the history and posts from the SAS and forums where Sarah had been harassed and compiled information, such as URIs and email addresses. "Let's go to the police together," I suggested. By then, Sarah had calmed down somewhat, and though she seemed puzzled by my efficiency, she nodded in agreement and followed me to the police station. At the police station, I explained the situation and the measures we had taken, and Sarah presented the evidence to the officers. I emphasized to the police, who didn't seem to grasp the severity of the situation, the rapid escalation of the harasser messages, the repetitive use of certain phrases, and the extensive collection of Sarah's information indicating a high likelihood of habitual stalking and a clear threat of physical violence. The officers, struck by the seriousness of our case, even questioned our relationship. Despite the rumors that might arise about a young woman being involved with an older guy like me, I couldn't help but deny it in a panic, which ended up amusing both the police officer and Sarah. Considering the current situation, the culprit hasn't been identified yet. Moreover, the chances of resolution seem slim given we're dealing with a small local police station. All we could do was carry out whatever measures were possible at the moment. But I knew the importance of these actions all too well. After leaving the police station, I introduced Sarah to a trustworthy lawyer on our way back to the office. It was a necessary step for officially establishing the case. Sarah seemed puzzled by my extensive involvement. "Who exactly are you, Michael? Why are you going to such lengths for me?" It was a natural question given our nearly non-existent prior interaction. Though my acquaintance with Sarah was brief, I found nothing dubious about her character, nor did she seem like someone who would create enemies. That's why I felt it would be terribly unfair for her bright future to be ruined by vile individuals. I didn't want her to go through the same experiences I had, but unable to convey this to Sarah, I awkwardly brushed it off. I just happened to know a thing or two. Eventually, the man behind the harassment and threats towards Sarah was apprehended. He was a complete stranger to her, but apparently the SNS platform had notified him that they were a good match. Using the information from Sarah's SNS, he began to obsessively project his ideal image onto her. The content he posted on forums portraying himself as an ex-boyfriend made me acutely aware of the dangers of sharing personal information online with strangers. After the ordeal with Sarah was resolved, I returned to my routine at the office. However, to my surprise, I wasn't the first to arrive that day. When I got to the office, Sarah was already at her desk, greeting me with a bright smile. "Good morning," she said. Initially surprised, I too returned the greeting with a smile upon seeing her carefree smile. As I was about to sit at my desk, Sarah marched up to me. "Could I have a moment?" she said, pointing outside. I had thought our paths wouldn't cross again after resolving the issue. I was wondering what was going on, but I followed her lead. We stopped in front of the bulletin board used for company announcements. Sarah, with childlike excitement, unveiled a notice with a tada. I braced myself for potential bad news apprehensively. I turned my gaze to the notice board where a temporary personnel announcement was posted. My name, current position, and a transfer to the head office's new CSIRT department were detailed in the center. Sarah explained the new department to me with a face beaming with joy, as if to say the surprise was a huge success. The CSIRT department, she elaborated, was established as a specialized division within the company, extending beyond internal security to focus specifically on issues like information leaks. She then revealed her secret. "Actually, I'm the niece of President Charles. Though I was hired on my own merit, It's undeniable that my situation greatly influenced the establishment of this department." She shared the backstory of the department's inception and chuckled mischievously, seeing my astonishment. Sarah seemed pleased. She then shared something Mr. Charles had told her. "It's true. I asked for your help, but beyond that, Mr. Charles has long wished to bring you back to the head office. Despite the difficulty in overturning decisions in such a large company, he regrets exacerbating the hardship of a valued employee. As a family member and someone you've helped, I sincerely apologize. I'm truly sorry." With that, Sarah apologized to me. Indeed, I was once on a fast track at the head office, well regarded by Mr. Charles. However, amidst my rapid progress, an incident occurred in the neighborhood where a girl went missing. Of course, I was aware of the news, but I largely brushed it off as someone else's problem. At that time, I was living in a suburban house with my wife and 2 daughters. However, I was practically only coming home to sleep, so I knew nothing about the neighborhood or the people living in it. Therefore, it should have been an incident that had nothing to do with me. But sometime after the disappearance, my name was somehow posted on a popular bulletin board as a suspect. Before I knew it, my address, family, social media accounts, and workplace were all exposed, and I was condemned as a criminal by the public without my knowledge. My family and I were harassed by the media and onlookers to the point that we couldn't even return home. I was suspended from work and had to attend police inquiries. For a while, my family and I took refuge in my in-laws' house far away. But after a few weeks, even my in-laws, who initially welcomed us warmly, started to look at me with suspicion. Feeling the awkwardness, I discussed leaving with my wife, but she and my daughters couldn't even look me in the eye. Realizing I had no place left, I silently packed my bags and moved to a hotel alone. It was then that I truly realized how much I had neglected my family bonds by focusing solely on work. But it was too late. Since then, I've been hiding alone in cheap hotels like a real criminal. I kept wondering how long this life would last, constantly hunted by the worst thoughts. Months later, the girl's case was suddenly resolved. The culprit was a university student from a distant state who had contacted her through a website for runaways. He lured her to his home through clever manipulation on social media, and when she couldn't find her there, of course, neither the girl nor the arrested student had any acquaintance or relation to me. When I saw the news of the case being solved, I broke down and wept on the spot. While I was relieved the case was solved, I couldn't help but wonder what my life had been all about until now. Overwhelmed by various emotions, I cried all day long. The next day, though still in a daze, I regained my original vitality and decided to take action. I rushed to a law firm offering free consultations and shared my story. The lawyer I met was familiar with my case and became a strong ally, promising to ensure I received justice. From there, everything moved quickly. We rallied public support, pressured the providers and administrators, and quickly obtained information on the malicious party who spread my personal information, filing a lawsuit. The man who ruined my life was arrested easily. I didn't recognize the culprit's name, but when I mentioned it to my wife, who had just returned home, her face went pale. It turns out the man was her high school classmate. They had reconnected at a reunion and had been in touch since, with my wife often sharing her complaints and frustrations about me with him. My wife insisted she hadn't cheated, but at that point, it didn't matter to me anymore. My feelings for her had completely cooled. Of course, it's not entirely her fault. The breakdown of a marriage is often due to both parties. This situation was a result of my neglecting my family. I realized this through the ordeal, and although my wife insisted she wasn't to blame until the end, I didn't blame her. And as for my daughters, who I did love in my own way, they didn't warm up to me much either, having spent so much time with a mother who disliked me. So our parting was over in an instant. It was a surprisingly abrupt end to my family, but the case had been resolved after all, feeling motivated by the resolution. I decided to return to work and give it my all. However, life wasn't that simple. Upon my return, I was met with a transfer to a small rural branch office, a clear demotion. This personnel change had been issued before the true culprit and the person who spread my personal information were caught. But as far as the company was concerned, it was better to err on the side of caution. I was expected to take responsibility for causing a stir. Having just returned and faced this decree, I even considered quitting. But with a trial still pending, and essentially nothing else left for me, I accepted the transfer. So, I was assigned to the branch despite being viewed as an unwelcome presence. As if where there's smoke, there's fire, I continued to be part of the company, eventually becoming the man who doesn't work. Although I was reminiscing about the bitter memories of the past, I couldn't help but smile at the story about Mr. Charles that was conveyed to me by Sarah. I indeed had my concerns about the treatment I received at the time. However, I wasn't fired or demoted, and I've heard it was because Mr. Charles opposed the transfer. Until the end, considering his kindness. Looking back, I can now say that life in the countryside was enjoyable. Upon hearing my words, Sarah timidly showed a smile. As we were talking, a woman approached us idly and said, "Excuse me." She was Lisa from the same department, but we had never really spoken before, and she stood a bit away from us, listening to our conversation. Lisa approached us with a tearful face and apologized. "I think I was initially unfriendly to you, and yet you helped me in many ways." I realized it was a misunderstanding, but I never said anything. "I'm truly sorry." It turned out that not only Lisa, but also William was there and, speaking out, he joined in with an apology. "Well, I didn't really mind, but I'm sorry I couldn't be of any help." Feeling bashful from their apologies, I ended up making a joke. "What is this? Is today apologizing to me?" Then Sarah, with a bright smile, suggested, "Should we make it today? Let's invite Mr. Charles too." Seeing me flood, all four of us burst into laughter. I never thought I'd see a day when I could laugh like this again. It's a secret that I felt a little teary-eyed. A month after this incident, after a surprisingly comfortable farewell party at the branch, I found myself in the president's office at the headquarters. Mr. Charles, as vigorous as ever, was there, and I felt warmth in my heart to meet him again. Then, Mr. Charles personally explained the significance and purpose of my new department and the expectations for it after its establishment. Not many have experienced a life like yours. However, there will continue to be instances where innocent people like you and your niece suffer. It's presumptuous for a company that couldn't be there for you at that time to say this, but it's precisely because of the regret from that time that I strongly felt the need for a department that can protect not only the company, but also its employees. I believe you, who understand my requests and the meaning of the department, are the right person to lead it. I'm counting on you." Feeling a surge of resolve at his words, I firmly responded, "Yes." And so, I returned to the headquarters as the head of the new department. I was warmly welcomed by those who knew me from before. I received offers of cooperation from many people, and the feelings of disappointment and emptiness I had when I left seemed to finally disappear. I thought I had no allies, no place to belong, but I realized that there were always people who stood by me. Life is unpredictable. What seemed smooth just a moment ago can suddenly plunge into darkness. Conversely, when you think it's all over, you might find joy in unexpected places and pleasant surprises waiting for you. Having gone through various experiences, I've come to truly understand what life is about. Just as harsh natural conditions can create beautiful landscapes, I'd like to think that my experiences have added some depth to me as a person. Now I stand in front of the new department that has become my place once again. Slapping my cheeks with both hands to psych myself up, I say, "All right," out loud and step into my new department, ready to start anew.